Alright, welcome to my video that goes a bit more in depth about my level for my portfolio. Quick recap, this is a Half-Life 2 inspired linear first-person shooter level. I will now give a quick rundown of the project details. It is made in Unreal Engine 4.26. It was developed over 7 weeks half time, so 4 hours a day for 7 weeks. It aims at showing just pure level design, a refined blockout, some lighting, and scripting events. The only assets used in this project from the Unreal Marketplace were blockout tools, unified interactive water, and low poly shooter pack. So here we see the flowchart of the level. If you want to take a closer look, just pause the video and you can read it, or you can just find it on my portfolio website. But yeah, this is the flow of the level, sort of how it's gonna go, just so you're aware. So what you're going to see now is me just playing through my level, and yeah, with some commentary on top. I'm gonna pause the video at certain points where I'm gonna just go more in depth in certain areas of the level, which I find more important. One of those areas is the reveal of the dam. I want it to be a nice slow reveal that truly emphasizes the size of the dam compared to the player, which is also why I placed the player in a lower elevation compared to the dam. I also tried to place some power lines up above it to frame it nicely. And down in the left corner you can see a piece of the fence that's bent, which will show the player where to go next. I wanted to subtly guide the player towards this tower, which is where they'll find their weapon. In order to do so, I pointed the landscape slightly downwards as an arrow towards it, and this rock also slightly points upwards towards the tower. This is the path leading into the building, which the player needs to find. Since they don't have a weapon, they can't get in any other way. So this is like a foreshadow to show you the path you need to find in order to get inside. So here we see a hole in the floor, which the previous path we saw leads to. So in case you missed the previous hint, this will still make the player understand that I need to find the path that leads here. This is the sewer grate that the player needs to blow up once they have acquired their weapon in order to get inside the dam. To make them understand this, I framed the grate several times on top of placing enemies here later. I wanted to give the player a hint about what their objective for the level is. So in this room I posted 2 pictures showing off the turbine the player will later encounter in the level. So this is where I introduce the weapon to the player. My goal was to create a space where the player felt safe, in control, and at an advantage to the enemies. That's why I placed the player up in this tower and then the enemies on the ground. This was also a good place to show the player that the red explosive barrels can be shot for blowing up things. Being able to blow up the truck was one of the scripted events I created for the level, but also the gates opening, the truck driving in, and the enemy spawning are part of that event. Here we have another quick framing of the sewer grate the player now needs to blow up. So I intentionally left this upcoming area void of any enemies whatsoever. This was to give the player some breathing room between the enemy encounters. This is the first room the player will see as they enter the dam. I wanted to have a very circular theme here as you exit the pipe and enter this room that has an arched ceiling, as well as having some really nice reflections in the water. So here I created a drop-off point before the player enters combat. This so the player can just move back and hide and then start peeking through some openings. I also placed a table down below so the player can hide behind that one as they drop down upon the shelf to your right. The issue I ran into, however, was that players still stand upon the shelf instead of dropping down to the table. So to solve this, I probably would have made the shelf perhaps a destructible item, so it breaks when the player jumps down on it and forces them down to the ground level. I intentionally made the player face this direction as they drop down from the vent, because then they can see this room that they've previously been in, and this will hopefully help them orient themselves as to where they are in the level right now. So behind this locked door is where the critical path of the level continues, but I intentionally made it a bit more obscure so that the player will explore this area a bit more before they continue. So here I used something called Denial and Reward. The reward being the HP and ammo you can see to your left, and the denial being that we have bulletproof glass as well as a locked door, which hinders the player from getting to the reward. Down to the left, we see a potential way of getting inside the room, and this should make the player curious and want to find this optional path. So here we see into the final room of the level, the Turbine Chamber. I did this in order to build both expectation and anticipation for what's to come. So here I want to talk about several design techniques, the first being funnel before reveal. And this means that I made this corridor a lot darker and a little bit smaller as well. That will serve as a big contrast to what's outside, which is the very bright and big and open space. Here the player needs to hold down their button in order to open this door. As soon as they let go, the doors will close behind them. This will serve as a point of no return, locking the player outside, but it's also a perfect place where you can unload previous level assets. So here I reward the player with a nice vista over the level, but this will also serve as a callback so they can see how far they've gotten, and also serve as a way to orient themselves as to where they are in the world right now. So here I wanted to build some tension for the player without using any enemies, so I intentionally made a very narrow path they have to balance with the possibility of falling down. So here we enter the final room of the level. I wanted this to be the biggest and hardest combat area of them all. I wanted the player to get on top of the turbine, so in order to hint this, I placed two guards up there on top of it, as well as a door leading into the turbine which has one of those locks you have to shoot open. So this should tell the player that they need to find a optional path to get up and unlock this door. So here we have reached the end of the level, where the player blows up the turbine and thus completing their objective. This also concludes the video. I hope you find it interesting, and if you have any questions about the design or anything else, just leave a comment or send me a message. Alright, see you.